Hello, my crafting friends. Are you looking for home decor DIYs that have that vintage Americana feel that are perfect for 4th of July or for just all summer long? Then come craft with me. My name is Sarah and welcome to my channel Primrose Lane Prims. If you haven't done so already, I hope you'll consider hitting that subscribe button and crafting again with me in the future. And now let's jump right into these DIYs. For this first DIY, you're going to need a few different types of rag strips here. And I'm using a black and cream gingham, a red and cream, and this little star homespun with navy blue. And I'm going to cut these into, they're about 1 inch wide, approximately 8-9 inches long, roughly right around there. We're going to use these scraps of fabric here to make some really cute little Americana type themed rag dolls. These are so simple and turn out so cute. So I'm going to take my 3 different types of fabric here and I'm just going to lay them out kind of in the order pattern that I want. You could use all of one type of fabric if you wanted to, or just whatever type suits your decor. These are just what I picked. I wanted something to have a bit of Americana theme that will be perfect for 4th of July or just to keep out all summer. So once I have my fabric strips laid out, I'm just going to gather them in the center and I'm going to take a decently sized piece of this thinner jute twine and I'm going to tie them off tightly in a knot right in the center, kind of like you would to start off a tassel. So this is what it looks like just tied off. I'm going to set that aside and I'm actually going to make 2 of these because I want to make a couple of these little rag dolls to fit on my little peg shelf. This one will actually had 1 extra scrap of fabric. So this one has one extra piece of fabric as to the other ones. So once I have these tied off, I'm going to grab my little pack of beads here that I get off of Amazon, and I'm going to take 2 of the larger ones. These are going to be the head of my little rag doll, and I just trim my twine up here on the ends. One bit was a little longer than the other, and I wanted them to be the same size so that I could easily pop them right through this center of this bead and pull it down. So I'm just going to do that to both of them. Just trim that so that the tails are even and just add my bead right on. Now I'm going to take my rusty wire here. This is also something I get off of Amazon, and I'm going to cut about roughly a 6-inch piece or so of this. I didn't exactly measure it, just kind of eyeballed it. This is going to be the arms of our little doll, and I'm going to use that to make a second piece for my second doll. And I'm going to take my wire and I'm going to fit it right here between the fabric and my bead. And then I'm going to twist that around tightly right around that twine right above where my fabric is. Just give it a good twist there. Now I'll take a little bit of hot glue now that my wire is on for the arms and add it just right on top of that fabric and push that bead down into it. That will help hold all of that together so that bead doesn't slide around. And we'll do some more securing at the end, but for now that'll hold that until we get to that point. So you can see what our little rag doll is looking like thus far. Now for the arms, I'm going to take some of these smaller beads and I'm going to put 4 of these smaller ones on each of my little wire arms. Like I said, I get this little pack of multi-size beads off of Amazon, but I know you can get beads anywhere. Dollar Tree even has different ones. I'm just going to, for right now, I'm just going to twist that wire up to hold those beads on so that they don't fall off until we get this finished. Now when I go back in with my twine here, and now that I've got the little arms, the beads in the arms, I'm going to take another small piece of twine here and wrap it right around the center and tie it in the back to give the little body of our little rag doll a little bit of definition. These little dolls are so cute. They turn out so adorable and they're so easy to make. And you could really do these in any size. I'm just doing smaller ones here that will fit easily on, say, a hutch knob or a little peg shelf. That's actually why I have a little peg shelf in my living room that I want to hang these on for the summer. But you could even put them in as bowl fillers. They're really so versatile. And like I said, they're so cute and fun to make. So now that I have the little body tied up, I'm going to go into my little pick here. This is my little star and pitberry pick. You've probably seen me picking pieces off of this over the past few videos. I'll get one of these and just use it for many, many projects. And Amazon has very similar ones to this, which I do have a link down below to some similar ones. So I'm going to pick a couple of these stars off of this, a dark blue one and a cream one. And we're going to have our little ragdoll holding this. So I'm going to go back to the arms and I'm just going to twist right here just to give it a little bit of a curly Q knot. That'll be the little hands of our doll. And then take the two leftover wires hanging together and twist them together. And these little stars have a hole in them. So that excess wire there, I'm just going to pop right through the hole of our star and bend it over. So our little ragdoll is holding a little star. So just twist these around to make just a couple little curly cues there to act as hands. Then bring them together and twist the excess wire together into one. And this star still had the old wire from where it was attached. Just had to snip that off there. But you can see the hole that it has. And then just feed that excess wire from the hands into that hole and twist it around and back to secure it. So our little ragdoll here is really taking shape. You can really get a good look. But I want to give her a little bit of hair, so I'm just going to go with my thicker jute twine here. This is the 4-ply jute twine, the thicker stuff I get at Walmart. And I'm going to add some hot glue right across the top of her head. And I'm going to hot glue a decent length here. We want her to have some long hair. I guess it's preference if you want to have short hair or long hair, however you would want your little ragdoll to be. I want mine to be long, so I'm going to leave it hanging over a couple inches on each side. So now that's in the front of my little twine hanger that's on the top from where we strung that bead through. And now the second piece I'm going to add glue and put on the back side. That's going to help hold secure also that bead so that it doesn't go anywhere, as well as the twine sticking at the top that will be the hanger for our little doll. And I'm just going to keep hot gluing and adding little strips of this jute twine all the way across the back of the bead, the little head for my doll, until it's completely covered. Kind of like a twine rainbow. Does that make sense? And it'll keep getting smaller and smaller, the bead that's showing. And right here, I didn't even have enough space left to loop it. I just had to do an individual piece as the last one here in the back to finish covering that bead. Now, since it's that 4-ply twine, I'm just going to unravel it here, make it look a little bit more like hair. And if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to drop down and hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, I hope you'll consider hitting that subscribe button and crafting again with me in the future. It's completely free. Also, there's a feature called Hype that's also a completely free way to support creators and show your enjoyment of a video. It just lets YouTube know that you enjoyed it and to maybe share it with more friends that have not seen my channel yet. It really helps me out and I do appreciate it. So here is what the doll's hair look once it's all combed out. Now you could tie it back if you wanted to, put it in pigtails. I'm just going to leave mine down, kind of free flowing. And I went ahead and added the hair to my second doll the exact same way, and then just tied that top piece of twine together as the hanger. And here these are so simple, so budget friendly, and they turn out so rustic and so sweet. For this next DIY, I'm going to be using this little wooden spool and a pack of these little wood stars. This is actually from Dollar General, little pack of wood stars. And I'm just going to grab a strip of fabric. This is just a red and cream gingham homespun. It matches the little dolls that I just made. One of the colors I put in those. And I'm going to just kind of rip this down here a little bit. It was just a little too thick because I want to glue and wrap this around the center of my little spool here. So just add a little hot glue, add my fabric, and then just wrap it all the way down around and secure it with a little more glue. And of course, strings. Homespun strings, gotta love them. Now, this pack of stars, like I said, from Dollar General, and it has multi different sizes. I'm going to take two of the larger ones and one of the medium sized ones. And I'm going to paint one red, one white, and one blue. And I'm going to use my Waverly Crimson chalk paint here, my crimson, or sorry, my chalk paint in the color Ocean, and a cashew colored. I'm not going to do a pure white. I want to do the cashew color, which really it's almost very similar to the natural wood color. But I like this to be rustic and primitive, so I like to have that off-white color a little more than just the stark white. But really, it's up to you, whichever. You could use chalk paint, you could use acrylic, whatever you have on hand. These are just the ones I've tended to be using this season. Now, once these are dry, I'm going to take my Waverly Antique Wax, and I'm just going to dry brush over these, starting at the point of each star and pulling in, just to give these a little bit of that rustic antique look that, well, I love. If that distressed look isn't so much your thing, you can just absolutely skip this step. Now I'm going to grab another little piece of this fabric that I wrapped around the spool, and I'm just going to cut three really small little strips here. I'm going to attach wires onto the back of my star, and I want to use that fabric to put over top the wire when I glue it to give it a little extra hold. And I'm just taking my rusty wire once again that I get off Amazon, and I'm going to cut three pieces of this. I cut one about 5 inches and two of them are about 4 inches approximately. So I'm just going to flip my star over, add a little strip of hot glue to the back, place my wire in it, and then take that little scrap of fabric I cut and place over top that wire to ensure that it stays put. That wire doesn't have a lot of surface area, so I like to add a little bit of the fabric on the back to keep it, make sure that it's going to stay put. And I haven't said, but we're going to make a little star shelf sitter here, or a little thing to pop into a tiered tray. So once I have these glued, I'm going to take my two larger ones, kind of place them together here and twist that wire around. We want to make these stars into a little bundle. And I want my smaller cashew colored one to be slightly lower. So I'm just going to kind of play around and get it to where I want it placed. And then I'm going to take the wire that's attached to that cashew colored one and wrap it all the way around. the other two wires so that we have a nice little secure star bundle here. Now, the rest of these excess wires here, I'm going to kind of fold them up and around in a little horseshoe shape here. And this one was a little longer than the others. I was just going to trim that off. I just want this to have a little bit of a thicker base here because if you haven't guessed, I'm going to stick that down into my little thread spool here. And it actually fits pretty snug. I don't want it coming out the bottom. That's why I wanted to bend it around. I wanted it to be wide enough. It kind of sticks in there, which is exactly what it did. But I'm going to go ahead and add just a little hot glue down in there as well to ensure that it definitely stays put. Then I can arrange my stars how I want them. Now, grabbing a little bit of my dried Spanish moss, I'm going to hot glue it right to the top of this spool just to hide that base. Add just a little more touch of rustic. I love the look of moss. Any primitive project. Now, I thought the spool of thread needed just a little bit more, so I just grabbed my thinner jute twine here, and I just wrapped it around a few times in the center of that little thread spool, tied it off in a knot, and trimmed off the edges. And that's all there is to this one. So easy, so simple, but it turns out so stinking cute. I'm going to add mine to my little tiered tray. You've seen pictures of it over probably the past couple weeks. I've posted, keep adding things to it. This third DIY, I'm going to be using a few more of these larger wood beads. So I'm going to take 3 of them. This is a super easy and fast DIY. Once again, perfect to pop into a tiered tray on a shelf. We're going to be making some little firecrackers here, but not your classic stick-looking fireworks. We're going to make the little round ones, almost like the ones you would see on classic cartoons. That's the kind of look we're going for here. So I'm painting each one red, white, and blue, and I'm using the same chalk paints, Waverly chalk paints I used on the stars. And I'm going to go in with my larger jute twine, and I'm going to tie a knot in the bottom with a bit of a tail at the end. That's going to be our fuses for our little firecrackers. And then I'm just going to trim that off right close to the knot. Now that the beads are dry, I'm just going to go in with a little bit of my Waverly Antique Wax, go over these slightly just to distress them just a little bit, just to dull down that paint because like I said, I love my rustic. Primitive, if you don't like that grunging, you don't have to do this part. It's really personal preference. These are really customizable. You can, if you like the primitive or whether you don't, but you all know I do. I'm just going to wipe a little bit of the excess off of my paper towel. I don't want it too much. And once those dry, I'm just going to add a little drop of hot glue right over top of the hole and glue my little knot twine fuse here right on top and press that down real good. I want that knot down in that glue really good. So one, it holds that edge that I snipped off really close. Make sure that doesn't ever unravel. But 2, I want that to look like the fuse is coming up out of the top. So I'm going to trim my little fuses down a little bit here. They were a little too long. And look how cute those are, little classic cartoon fireworks. So I'm going to grab my apple barrel paint pen here and I'm going to add one final touch. I'm just going to write the word boom on my red one. Boom. On the blue one, I'm going to write bang. And then on my white one, I'm just going to write pop. Because what do fireworks do? They go boom, bang, pop. just thought these were a cute twist on just the traditional fireworks. And here they are in my tiered tray. I just popped these right in. And I love how they turned out. You guys will have to drop me a comment and let me know what you think. This last DIY, I'm going to use one of these little wood plaques from the Dollar Tree in the Crafter Square section, the square ones. And I'm going to start off by removing this twine hanger here, but I'm going to set it aside because I will use it later. This project is when I wanted to make a little wall hanger, and I was really kind of inspired by, if you ever go to Cracker Barrel and, out on the front porch, there's always the game boards, the checkerboards, the things that are sitting out. And that's kind of what inspired me with this one. I wanted to make something that could not only be decorative, hung on the wall, something rustic, but something that was also functional too, that reminded me of lazy summer days sitting on the porch, sipping iced tea or lemonade, and maybe playing a game of checkers or tic-tac-toe. So that's what we're going to make here. We're going to make a wall hanger game board here. And I'm taking my ruler, and as you can see, I'm just going all the way across and marking it just the size of my ruler, which is about 1 inch. This is a 12 by 12 plaque. So it's actually the perfect size here just to go right along the size of my ruler and mark these strips across each direction to make a nice checkerboard pattern across the entire piece. Now, I want this to have a border, and on a checkerboard, there's usually about 8 across and 8 up. So that's what I'm marking off here. There's enough to have one full round of border around this. Does that make sense? So I'm just marking my corners of what I want to be my actual checkerboard separated from the border. And I'm going to grab my Waverly chalk paint in the color Ocean here, and I'm just going to paint the outside square all the way around in the blue. And with this, I'm following my pencil line, but if no one's ever told you an easy way to make a straight line, put the palm right there, the palm of your hand down on the flat surface, and get yourself a nice good flat brush here and just drag your hand right along that line. That's all you got to do. Just drag your palm right along that line with your brush and then fill in. It really makes drawing a straight line with paint a lot easier than what you might think it would be. Just lay your palm there and just drag it right along. This doesn't have to be perfect. Not every line has to be perfect, pristine. We want it to have that nice hand painted element to this. I want this to remind me of, say, something that maybe your dad or grandpa made of an old game board that, sits out on the porch that you break out to play games on in the summer. I wanted to have that handmade quality to it. The one that's was painted with love and has had many years of use. Now for the actual checkerboard, I'm going to go in with my cashew first. And I'm going to start off here in the corner, and I'm going to go every other square in my cashew. Once again, these don't have to be pristine perfect. If they go over a little, that's okay. Like I said, we wanted to have that rustic handmade element to this. But if you get yourself, like I said, a nice good blush with a nice flat edge, it really is a lot easier to hit those little straight lines than you probably think it would be. I can promise you I'm no professional painter by any shape of the imagination. So if I can do it, you can do it. And on the next row up, I will hit every other one in between. I'm just going to keep doing that all the way up the board. So once I finish with the cashew squares, I'm going to go in with my chalk paint in the color crimson, and I'm going to fill in all of the squares in between. Give it that nice pretty checkerboard pattern. This is a project. It takes a little bit of time to paint all your squares, but it's really worth it in the end. I really, really love how this turned out, and I hope you all do too. I really do. You'll have to drop me a comment and let me know what you think. If this is one of those projects that you can hang on the wall and have an aesthetically pleasing looking rustic checkerboard, but you also have something that's functional too, that you could take off, maybe say it's hung on a screen in porch, and pop it down to play a quick game of checkers with the kids or grandkids or tic-tac-toe. So once all of my squares are dry, I'm going to grab my black apple barrel paint pen, and this is the ultra fine tipped. And I'm just going to take this and drag it right down the line of each of my little squares here of my checkerboard. I just want to give these a little bit more definition. And as you can see right here, as I was doing it, I realized my one little red square here, I didn't have quite enough red paint on. No big deal, easy fix. Just grab my brush, added a little bit more where I needed it. So just have fun with this project. So I'm just going to go down, add just a little bit of definition and highlight to each of these squares. I'm going to go down each way. So I'll go this direction, flip it, and go down the lines on the other as well. Does that make sense? Vertical and horizontal. So here you can see this is the last line after I've done it both of the other directions. It just really makes those squares pop. And then I'm just going to go right around the outside as well. Now I wanted to add a few little stars to this as well, because like I said, I wanted this to have that red, white, and blue Americana feel, but also be perfect to keep out all summer long. So I'm just going to paint 3 stars on the top and 3 stars opposite on the bottom. And if you've seen me do the stars before, you just want to start making a little notch at the top, one to the left and right, and then an upside down V and fill it in. Hand painted stars look a lot harder than what they really are. So a little notch at the top, one to the left and right, and an upside down V. Top, left, right, upside down V. And there's your star. Now I want to distress mine. If you don't want yours distressed, if you want to keep it this paint pristine as it was, absolutely you could do it. It would look great that way as well. But I want to make mine look a little worn, like it's been sitting around for a few years. It's gotten a lot of family game nights maybe out of it. So I'm just going to go with my sandpaper. I'm going to go all around these edges, really scuff up that paint. Hit those edges, take it down to the wood in some places, especially on the edges, and then I'm going to go lightly across the entire board. Like I said, I just want to scuff this up, just kind of dull down that paint a little bit, make it look a little older than what it really is. And then I'm going to go with my antique wax and just dry brush it all over this piece. I want to make sure to hit these edges really good. All the places where I took it down to the bare wood, get that wax down in there. This really darkens this paint up, gives it a really, really pretty antique look. Just going to drag that all the way across my whole board. And I like to go in lightly at first and then go back after I've gotten it one coat lightly and add a little bit of darker spots here or there. Because just like with anything aged or antique, there will be some sections that are maybe a little more than others. But the amount, or if any at all, is complete personal preference. I just like my good old dinge. Y'all probably know that by now, though, huh? Now, the last thing I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna go back in with my apple barrel paint pen here, and I'm just gonna add a couple little highlights around the edges of my stars. I'm not going to completely trace the outline of the stars. I'm just on each little branch of my star, add a small little line just to kind of highlight, give them just a little bit of extra definition. And I have these little wooden game pieces. This was actually from an old checkers game I had that I don't even think I have the game anymore, but I'd saved the pieces. They're just little cuts of wood. And that's what I'm going to use for the pieces of this. And I'll show you what we're going to do to store these pieces in a second. But I'm going to go ahead and take that twine hanger I originally took back off. I'm going to pop it back through the holes here and tie off the fronts and knots. That's going to be the hanger for our little board. So say you want to hang it on the wall. There it is. That's how you'll do it. Now I want this to be a dual game board. So we're going to take the back here and I'm going to go with my ruler. And this time I kind of just eyeballed where I wanted the lines to be to make a tic-tac-toe board. Two going one way, two going the other, and a nice little pound sign or hashtag sign, I guess, depending on what generation you're from, what you call it. Can always tell my age when I call it a pound sign. My kids look at me like, what? Anyways, once I draw out my lines for my tic-tac-toe board, I'm going to go in with my cashew colored chalk paint and I'm just going to paint these lines. I'm just going just take the length or the width of my paintbrush and just filling in. And my lines definitely are not perfect, y'all, but I think that adds a little bit of charm to it. And as you can see, I got one section here just a little too thick compared to the others. Just grabbed my ocean chalk paint, touched it up. So one thing with paint, it's definitely fixable. You can always fix it. So I'm just going to take my sandpaper and once again, I'm going to sand this down a little bit. I want it to have that same rustic feel as the other side. Now, in addition to the sanding, I grabbed my just a damp rag I have here. You could use a baby wipe as well. And I'm just wiping all over this. I'm going to use my damp rag here to actually take this down to the wood. In some places, do a little bit of the wet distressing as well, since this is chalk paint. That's the one great thing about chalk paint. You can just take a damp rag and rub off some of that paint before it's fully cured. Now, before I add any other distressing, I'm going to go along my lines here with my paint pen, just like I did on the other side, add a little bit of definition between the tic-tac-toe board lines and the blue. Just make those pop a little more defined. Once I have that done, just going to grab my Waverly Antique Wax and once again dry brush across this whole piece. Really hit those edges and the sections where I took the paint all the way down to the bare board. Just really antique this up. Now I've decided just to grab a little piece of homespun fabric. This is this black and cream gingham that I love. And I'm just going to take a little piece of that, just tie it in a knot right on the edge here of my little twine hanger, just for a little extra. I mean, why not? It could be functional and cute. Now for my game pieces, I just grabbed one of these little burlap bags, little drawstring bags. I get these off of Amazon. I usually get a big pack of them. I use them in tons of different projects, but I'm going to take one of these little bags and I'm going to take my Waverly Antique Wax and I'm going to go all over it because I want this bag to also look, I want it to look as weathered as the board I made. So I'm just going to dry brush my antique wax all over this burlap bag front and back and being sure to pop out those sides too. So that way where that crease is down the side when the bag is being in use, there won't be any places where the wax didn't get right there in those creases. So once again, these little game pieces that you use for the checkerboard on the one side, I can easily use for the tic-tac-toe board as well. And I'm going to add my little game pieces down in there and just cinch that right up. And when your game's not being in use, this can easily just be tied in a little bow right around the drawstring or right around the twine hanger of the board. And if this is, say, something you would want to hang, say, on a porch or anywhere that might even be with the elements, you will want to spray this with some sort of sealer. And look how cute. Guys, I really hope you like this project as much as I do. I really see some really fun, lazy summer days using these out on the porch with the kids. And that is it for today's video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to drop down and hit that like button. Drop me a comment. Let me know which of today's was your favorite, or if you think you might try any of these. And as always, follow me on socials. And until next time, God bless and happy crafting.